I'm Matt Smith. Right now on Upfront, a retired Wisconsin judge killed, a U.S. Supreme Court justice targeted, now growing demands to better protect judges.
And by allowing judges to be assassinated, we are slowly eroding the rule of law.
U.S. District Judge Esther Salas, whose son was killed in a targeted attack, standing by. Attorney General Josh Kaul with the latest on the investigation. Then, going prime time, the January 6th committee making its case to Americans. Another hearing now just hours away. Former Wisconsin Congressman Reed Ribble on the impact. And violence interrupters. The group going inside the violence to try to stop it.
Taking on the issues important to Wisconsin. This is Upfront.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Matt Smith. Still new details emerging this weekend and now new urgent demands for lawmakers to act. A Wisconsin judge killed inside his home. A U.S. Supreme Court justice threatened this past week. A man this weekend charged with attempted murder. In Juneau County, investigators say 56-year-old Douglas Udy shot and killed retired Judge John Romer. Romer sentenced Udy to 6 years in prison in 2005. Law enforcement sources say Udy also had a hit list and other targets, including Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, and Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. The Wisconsin Department of Justice is leading this investigation. Attorney General Josh Kaul is here. Attorney General, welcome back to Upfront.
Thanks for having me.
The suspect is dead. It appears from accounts from investigators that he was never in any state to cooperate after the shooting. How does this complicate the investigation where it sits today?
Well, it means we can't learn anything from the suspect. You always want to get whatever information you can, and certainly interviewing a suspect is part of that. But we are also, pursuing a number of other avenues to try to find whatever information we can about this incident, and that investigation is ongoing.
Judge Romer sentenced the suspect, Douglas Udy, back in 2005. Is this for certain what this is all about?
We can't say for certain because we weren't able to hear from the suspect himself, but as we have been talking about, this certainly appears to have been a targeted act. The judge was one of the folks who was a target of the suspect, and the obvious connection here is that court case. So it certainly appears that court case was a motivating factor, if not the sole reason that this happened. But we're going to continue to assess the facts here, and as we learn more information, we're going to keep people updated about that.
Have you become aware of any other connection between the two after that sentencing hearing in 2005?
At this point, we don't know of any other specific connection between those two, but again, the investigation is ongoing.
Have you found any letters, any journals, any online postings that may elaborate into motive here?
Again, we're not going to comment on additional things we've found, other than to note that there were additional targets. Those targets were notified, as we talked about before. We don't believe that there is any immediate danger or ongoing danger for those individuals. We haven't found any evidence indicating that, but if we do learn of any additional danger, we'll notify people.
You've talked about these additional targets. Law enforcement sources have said there have been 13 names on that. Broadly speaking, have you been able to identify a common thread among these names? At first glance, it may appear to be random, but it may also not be.
Yeah, what we've confirmed so far is that there were additional targets beyond the judge. There does appear to be some sort of connection to one or more cases. Of course, the judge handled that case as you talked about, and there are some other folks who appear to have some sort of connection to the legal process. But what the overall connection is of all the people there is a matter that we're continuing to assess, and that's part of what we hope to learn more about as the investigation moves forward.
There's been speculation and questions about whether the suspect was a lone wolf or part of a militia or part of a group. Earlier this week, you said that we are not in a position yet where we can comment on that definitively. Has that changed?
We're continuing to investigate any connections that the suspect may have had. But what I can say is that we're not aware of any ongoing danger to the public or to any specific individuals related to this incident.
As we sit here today, what are the biggest questions that remain unanswered for you in this investigation?
Well, this is an ongoing investigation. We're going to continue to look into whether there were any contacts that the suspect may have had with other individuals, what his motive for this incident was, and what the motive for identifying other potential targets may have been. Certainly looking into how he was able to obtain firearms.
Given his criminal history, should he have been able to purchase firearms legally?
My understanding is that he was prohibited from legally possessing a firearm based on having been convicted of a felony. So one of the issues is going to be how he was able to do that.
Attorney General Josh Kaul, Attorney General, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Growing calls now this weekend to better protect judges nationwide. U.S. District Court's Judge Esther Salas is standing by. Herself targeted, her son killed in an attack nearly 2 years ago. The latest national headlines still rippling this weekend. A California man now facing attempted murder charges, accused of making threats and showing up near the home of U.S. Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. All this nearly 2 years after the horrific scene in New Jersey. U.S. District Judge Esther Salas targeted a gunman dressed as a delivery driver attempting to assassinate her, killing her son and wounding her husband. The gunman, an attorney who once appeared in her courtroom. Now, the U.S. Marshals Service reporting more than 4,500 threats and inappropriate comments targeting federal judges and prosecutors last year alone. U.S. District Judge Esther Salas joins us now. Judge, welcome to Upfront. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Smith.
Let's begin here in Wisconsin. As you've heard these details come in, a retired judge killed in his home in a targeted attack by a man who appeared in his court years ago. Your reaction as you've watched these developments?
My reaction is heartache. I just was afraid of this. From the moment that my family was brutally attacked on July 19, 2020, the biggest fear that Mark and I have had to date was that somebody else would die. And hearing the news of Judge Romer and his assassination has just opened up a wound that will never heal, as you know, Mr. Smith.
Judge, as we sit here today, a California man is in custody for targeting Justice Kavanaugh this past week. Legislation in Congress named after your son to better protect the personal information of judges was recently blocked again by Senator Rand Paul. He wants to add members of Congress to that. At what point does this move forward? Is there any hope within this past week that this has momentum?
You know, I always hold on to hope. I've been holding on to hope and faith since my son, my only child, was brutally killed in our foyer. So I do believe that members of Congress can work together. I want to believe that, you know, our government functions as it should when it can. This is an issue that is bipartisan, bicameral, and, you know, I personally have heard from many senators, both Democrat, Republican, and independents, who support this bill. So it's unclear why we can't get this bill passed. I would note, Mr. Smith, that it's been 20 months and 21 days since my only child was killed in our foyer, and my husband, almost lost his life. I don't know what's going on, but I know that in America, we expect our leaders to do better.
Judge, what does this legislation do and why is it needed now?
This legislation does a couple of critical things. First thing it does is allow federal judges to remove their personally identifiable information off the internet. That is a big thing that, quite frankly, was used in my case. The killer in my son's case was able to compile what they call open source information and create a dossier on me. That dossier literally had where my son went to school, the routes I took to work. It had our home address, the church we attended, and he was able to stalk our house. He literally was outside my house on Friday night, all day Saturday, and Sunday at 5 o'clock, he came and rang the bell and took my only child and nearly took my husband of 30 years. The other thing the bill does, which is really critical, it has a grant program that incentivizes other states to enact laws that would protect judges' personally identifiable information. That is critical. That would allow states that haven't already enacted similar legislation to enact that legislation.
That was my next question for you. In Wisconsin, Judge Romer was a circuit court judge here in the state. The congressional bill just applies to federal judges. Do state legislatures need to act, and are you calling on the Wisconsin legislature to act in wake of this?
I strongly encourage all states to begin to look at laws like New Jersey passed. New Jersey passed the Daniel Anderl, it's called Daniel's Law, and it passed in November of 2020. And I want to commend our governor, Governor Murphy, as well as our New Jersey legislature for passing that bill in 4.5 months. So I do think that states now need to start looking at enacting this type of legislation. However, I would say this. I would say that we all need the federal bill in addition to any individual states' bills, because the federal bill allows us to stop these data brokers in different states from selling our information. So we need to make sure that we've got the federal umbrella under the state legislation, and that way they complement and secure judges' safety throughout the nation.
Judge, this sentence from Judge Romer came 17 years ago. Do you feel if this law was in place either at the federal level or the state level, this could have prevented this attack and the attack on your family?
You know, I have to say that I think that whenever you have legislation that protects this personally identifiable information and that also bolsters security systems and that also has a grant program and that also does things to protect judges, I mean, we could, very well save lives. I can't say for certain whether Judge Romer's life would have been saved. And in my case, I will say that it was a perfect storm. Sometimes these individuals go undercover. They don't advise people that they are planning something. There isn't a leak or anything that the authorities can get a hold of. And sometimes we have to be proactive. We have to be proactive and block that information from being used by would-be killers to harm judges at any level. We have to protect the rule of law. And by allowing judges to be assassinated, we are slowly eroding the rule of law, And we have to protect our democracy because you know what? That is what this country has been founded on, is our democracy. These things have to, we have to do something.
U.S. District Judge Esther Salas. Judge, we really appreciate your time and your perspective. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith, and please be safe.
You as well. Coming up, going primetime, the January 6th hearings in front of a nationwide audience. More hearings now scheduled this week, but will it move the needle? Former Wisconsin Congressman Reed Ribble standing by next.